If you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and hit that like button. It really helps me out. Alright, what's up guys? So today I wanted to go a bit off script, because usually I script my videos all the way through, but today I wanted to go a bit off script and just, freely talk about my favorite Logic projects. We're gonna go all the way from Young, Broken, Infamous, maybe even touch on the first Logic, the mixtape, for a second, but then all the way to now the latest album, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, and I'm going to go through and give my thoughts on every single project. I thought this might be a cool idea because I've been trying to do a video like this for some time, and as a lot of my subscribers are also Logic fans, I thought this would be just fitting. So just touching on his first ever project real quick, many people don't know this because it's not listed anywhere. It's not on his Wikipedia discography or anything, but his first project was actually under the name Psychological, after he thought of that rap name, and he released a mixtape called Logic the Mixtape. And if I remember correctly, he made this because he wanted to open up somewhere. I'm not sure where exactly it was. It might have actually been for Ghostface Killah, one of his first opening acts, but I'm not sure on that one. But he had to have some kind of music released for the organization or the company to consider him to even open up for a certain act. And then I'm not exactly sure, but he had like a really short, limited time to come up with some kind of project. And he threw this mixtape together. If you listen to it, there's a lot of improvement that can be done. You can actually see that it was really rushed, but it's really cool to see him, just rap over like heavily sampled beats and just stuff that he threw together quickly. But that was actually his first musical endeavor, and it's really fun to go back and listen to. It actually has some good storytelling tracks on there, but yeah, so that's the first project that I'm not going to talk about a lot. But now getting into Young, Broken, Infamous, his first real mixtape that he released under the name Logic. Stuff on here was already produced by Six, now his in-house producer, like Love Jones and stuff like that. And the project has some really good tracks. We start off with like Staying in the Game, which he also did his first music video for, if I'm correct. And it's a legendary project, and some tunes on here are they're really enjoyable, like more than you might even think from like a first project that someone releases. We also have, of course, the first Young Sinatra on here, which was inspired by the beat from Mac Miller's Kool-Aid and Frozen Pizza, which is really cool to see. We also saw Logic kind of like dabbling into other parts of music other than just rapping over beats. For example, on the track Young, Broken, Infamous, which featured him kind of singing, but in like a auto-tuned kind of way. But I actually enjoyed that track quite a lot. And of course, there's just bars on here, like Backpack is one of the OG Logic tracks. I still remember the YouTube video for that. So that's crazy. Yeah, we also had the Michael Jackson sample on Wordplay, I think it is. Which that's crazy. And I really missed that era. Although I wasn't an active Logic fan listening back then, but as I went back, I listened to this project heavily. And that's why it still holds like a very important part for me in Logic's whole discography. Now getting into the next one, Young Sinatra, the first one, his third or second mixtape, however you want to see it, was of course the one that he broke through quite a lot with, and it still holds some of my favorite Logic songs to this day. I remember All I Do was the first Logic song that I came across on YouTube. I came across the YouTube video. I think a lot of people did, because that was just his biggest hit at the time, All I Do. It has like 50, 60 million clicks on YouTube nowadays. That's pretty impressive for like a first era Logic song. But we have just legendary tracks on here. Like if I go through the track listing, One, of course, is one of my favorite Logic songs. 30,000 is crazy. I listen to that a lot. Beggin' is crazy. Mind of Logic had a video to it that also kind of blew up. Stuff like Addiction or Stewie Griffin is still one of they hold a very special place in my heart just because I've listened to them so many times and they've been with me like through certain times in my life. And Young Sinatra 2 was on here, which continued the saga. We had a very fan favorite, not one of my favorites, but I can see how is one of the Logic's fan base's favorite songs, which is Let Me Go, kind of a breakup song. Mixed Feelings is also good. Growing Pains 2, when he does that acapella thing on like the third or fourth verse, that's just go. Like, if you haven't listened to that song, go back and listen to Growing Pains 2 and listen to that third verse that he does acapella. It's really crazy. As I Am and Just Another Day are also some of his best hits, So that this project is also just legendary. And it's really I'm going to have a hard time critiquing the mixtapes because, of course, there might have been some things that could have, seen improvement, but as a Logic fan, and I think a lot of Logic fans agree with me on this, if you've really grown up with these records or at least they hold a special place in your heart, it's going to be hard to critique some things on these. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on the Young Sinatra, the first one, and now we're going to move on to Undeniable. So Young Sinatra Undeniable really saw an improvement in the perfection and in the, I would say, production and mixing of Logic's records, while the first Young Sinatra still had some, the samples weren't perfect and the quality of the music, if you listen to it nowadays, sometimes the drums are a bit off, but Undeniable really saw a big improvement in that, mainly because also Six and a closer circle of producers was involved with this. Logic wasn't just gathering beats from that he found on YouTube and stuff like that and putting and rapping over them, but he was actually sitting down and making a project that he wanted to. And yeah, this really also saw him break through even more. The whole Logic or the Young Sinatra chronology has just been him growing as an artist and as a fan base as well. So Undeniable, we start off with tracks like Inception, which is one of my favorite tones, Dead Presidents 3, which is legendary to this day. We have him even more, I can see how he was inspired by Drake at the time with tracks like, for example, 500 Days of Summer, What You Want, Do You Like, A Girl. But I thought that was a good thing, it saw him experimenting with more things. And still one of Logic's fan base's most, important tracks to this day, which is Dear God. I think everyone can agree on that. I Made It is also crazy worldwide. And in general, this project really just saw Logic growing from the first Young Sinatra through Undeniable, and then now going into the next one, which is Young Sinatra Welcome to Forever. So Welcome to Forever is really Logic's big mixtape that he released before he released Under Pressure. And at the time, people were expecting Under Pressure to come out, but then he released Welcome to Forever. And this really saw a huge improvement in the song structure, in the cohesiveness of the project. Because on this record, Logic, although he's trying to drop some bangers on this one, you can clearly see how, at the time, he had features from Kid Ink, Trinidad James on here, and he was really, Dizzy Wright is on here. We have Gene Aiko on here. Logic was a bigger name at this point. He was hanging out with No ID. He was recording his album. No ID produced, for example, I think Man of the Year on the record. Six was still working heavily. Seasick was on here as a producer. And it features probably some of his best known songs. Even the opening track, Welcome to Forever, is probably one of Logic's best songs. We have 5 a.m., which was a big hit at the time. And then, of course, he was trying to make some bangers On the Low, or what else we got on here? We have Ballin' on here, which nowadays with I don't remember, it wasn't some, I might have been Uncle Drew's soundtrack, and it blew up from there. It's on Spotify now. And Just a Man, Man of the Year. Probably my favorite song on here, Common Logic, Midnight Marauder, which is, of course, is a nod to Tribe Called Quest. So this project really just saw him blow up on the next level and really gave him that platform to release his debut album, Under Pressure, as like a better known artist and as like this hungry young artist that really, wants his place in the rap game. And this is what this project did. It is a solid project, and it gave him the platform to drop his first album, Under Pressure. And of course, in the meantime, between the release of Welcome to Forever and Under Pressure, we got a lot of songs. We got While You Wait, Finding Forever, all those freestyles he did on radio shows promoting Under Pressure, and that's what that project really did. And now, of course, getting into Under Pressure, by many considered the best Logic album, and it might actually be, just because I think this is Logic at his best perfection of his craft of writing verses, of putting songs structurally together. From the first song, the intro, which is him singing, and kind of, if you listen to it, it kind of throws you off because it's you're supposed to like hear him spit bars, but then he's just like singing on this piano instrumental, and to the last song, Till the End, which also features a crazy long verse from him. And all the way in between Soul Food with the crazy bars, we have Gang Related with that famous second verse. We have Bounds, which is like a club hit, or it was actually a hit, but it was supposed to be, and it still is. We have Nicki, some like a personal song even, and of course the big Under Pressure song, which goes for 9 minutes and 19 seconds, which many consider his best song, and I might even also say that for myself. So this album cemented his place in the music industry, and this is where also a lot of fans came, to Logic, and he grew his fan base even more, and it just gave him a perfect platform to expand as an artist. And he continued to do that with records like, now getting into the next one, The Incredible True Story, which of course saw him embracing a concept album, which saw him, going into different directions musically. This project isn't necessarily all bars like Under Pressure was, but it still was a hip hop album. Of course, unlike some other modern Logic albums he dropped, but we'll get into that later. The crazy thing about this is that there wasn't really a lot of hip hop at the time, and even to this day, that really took this concept of like some outer space type of stuff. Of course there was, but not in like the way Logic did it, from like the way he introduced the characters, and the way the characters also continued through the whole trilogy of Under Pressure, The Incredible True Story, and then Everybody. But this features like Fade Away is really has bars on it. We have which is crazy, Young Jesus, the first single, which features Big Lambo, Logic's friend, and the guy that allowed Logic to stay with him for a year until he got his record deal with Def Jam. So it was crazy for Logic to drop that as the single, because nobody would just put a note. Like, Big Lambo isn't a big rapper, he's just some homie from Logic. And that's why it was crazy that he dropped it. It really just showed that Logic, showed love in a way. But stuff like his City of Stars, many people hate on that song because they say the singing is off, but I think it was a good expansion of Logic's artistic abilities. Stuff like Stainless that at the time we've been teased for so long, like ever since the Undeniable days, and then it finally came out. And all the way through until the end, The Incredible True Story, which ended the whole theme, the whole adventure of the album, which is like these two guys in the Aquarius, they're trying to find a new habitable planet for humanity. He was, of course, heavily inspired by, movies like Interstellar for this project, and you can see that. But it's still, it's crazy that he put this into a form of a musical album. And the music on here doesn't even have to do a lot with the concept. The music is just fun, and of course sometimes introspective and intelligent, but also it's just fun. And the whole concept of the album is just brought to the listener by the skits in between and by what we get from that. And then moving on to actually, let's go to Bobby Tarantino in between, because Bobby Tarantino was he released Bobby Tarantino in between The Incredible True Story and Everybody. And Bobby Tarantino surprise dropped, which Logic had never done before. Now, of course, he's also done that a bit, or at least not totally surprised, but I remember Confessions of a Dangerous Mind and Supermarket dropped like with a 2-day notice. So, Bobby Tarantino, the first mixtape from Logic in, well, at least 3 years, I think. And it really, it had like a turn-up vibe to it. And that's what the whole Bobby Tarantino persona does for Logic. It allows him an outlet to not do like crazy lyrical, miracle, just songs, but some songs that are more turn-up and more fun. Like we had Flexecution, which was a hit, and stuff like Slave, the first and the second version, which are some of my favorite Logic songs. Wrist featuring Pusha T, which is crazy. Logic got Pusha on here. Super Mario World, which is a super fun song, like with the video to it as well. 44 Bars 2, although that song is also more introspective, but it got it got embraced from like Kevin Durant, and that's why Logic at the time was like he just grew and grew. And then this also led into the next album, which was under, and I'm tripping, Everybody, which of course is probably Logic's biggest album, maybe not number-wise, but at least from the hit from it, which of course was 1-800. It's Logic's biggest song to this day. I think it almost surpassed like 1 billion streams on Spotify, and it went a couple times platinum. And the Everybody project really continues the storyline and the concept of the first 2 albums with the characters from The Incredible True Story, and then it wraps it up in a way. So Logic also said he was incredibly scared to release it just because it touches on so many sensitive topics socially and in the human way. It touches on like race and discrimination and all type of that, and he talks about his own experiences with, for example, anxiety, which on the track Anxiety, it's a crazy, it's a really good song. I think one of the most underrated on the album. I'm not too big of a fan of the like fillers of the album that nobody talks about a lot, like Ink Blob, most definitely. Although of course it was really cool to see Juicy J on Ink Blot and the way they traded the bars. It was produced it was produced entirely by Six. And as I said, 1-800, one of the biggest songs Logic dropped to this day. Black Spider-Man, also a big song. Many people didn't like the album just because Logic touched on these subjects so on a surface level, which also is my number one critique point for the project. But I still think it's great that he was bold enough to push for this concept and to push for this concept to be on records, 3 years in a row, and the way he kind of thought about the whole thing and planned it out. So that's why the Everybody album is not as bad as I would say a lot of people make it out to be, and that's my take on that. The next project, Bobby Tarantino 2. Logic was on his high wave. He was, just off of the success of Everybody, and he dropped 44 More as the lead single for this, and it went crazy. 44 More is a great song. I love the song. I loved it when it dropped, and I think Bobby Tarantino 2 has some of the best combination between boom bap and trap, which also, the boom trap protocol on here also really nods to that, and I think it does this perfectly on tracks like Midnight or What's Up, State of Emergency, Wizard of Oz. He really combines his lyrical ability with just fun turn-up music, and the features on here are great. Sometimes I think the whole, nod to, some, nerdy culture, like the Rick and Morty intro doesn't really fit into the seriousness of the project, but at the time, Logic was on his, I don't care, I'm a just be me type of thing, and so that's why it's still cool. It's a fun project. It's not as serious as the Young Sinatra ones, if that makes sense. So it's not like it's super personal for Logic, but I can, it's great that he found a way to have an outlet for this type of fun turn up music. And Bobby Tarantino 2 was his last mixtape to this day. We're now gonna get into the next album, which was YS4, the Young Sinatra 4, the much anticipated fourth installment of the series by fans. And I remember when he dropped this, it was crazy because I was just so full of anticipation. And many people don't receive this album as well. And personally, I also think it's the weakest of the 4 young Sinatras, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. Logic, of course, wanted to channel that old energy from the first Young Sinatra projects and put it into like a modern version of this. I think it's great that he did this without caring about, I have to throw some like trap stuff in here just because, that's what's like popping right now. And he really stick to that. And the fact that he got the whole Wu-Tang Clan and Wu-Tang Forever, that's crazy. Like that you just have to give a shout out to Logic for doing that. I also think Legacy is one of my favorite tracks on here. We also have Ordinary Day, which saw like a more, from Harry Steinfeld, like a more singing kind of, hook we had on there, which I also liked. One Day with Ryan Tedder, which Logic wanted to be like the next big hit, with like this fusion of pop and hip hop. Not one of my favorites. But the whole Young Sinatra project is probably the weakest just because it's not as personal, and he tried to do something that he did better in the past. But I still think it's a good project. The whole thing has great replay value, and that's why I'm always come back to it. It's not like Logic did anything wrong with it. It's just people had higher expectations than it actually came out to be. The next project I want to get into is Supermarket, the soundtrack to his first novel. Many people don't like this one. I also saw that Anthony Fantano gave it a not good on YouTube. I have to disagree on this one. The main critique points were that Logic was trying to do like this indie rock thing, but did it in a way that was super cringy, and that like, he was trying to be something that he's not. But I think it's great that that a hip hop artist dabbles into these new genres and tries his thing there. We saw him combine some of that indie rock with like hip hop verses on some of these tracks, and I think that's a great thing. And this track has super personal songs on it that Logic also, I watched this podcast with him. I don't remember quite which one, but he talked about how like at the time he was meeting his now new wife after his first marriage came to an end, and that was like most of the inspiration that he brought to the songs. And I think you can really see that the songs are love songs that are heartfelt and that are really personal to him, and I think that just makes the project even better. My favorites on here are DeLorean, of course. I think Time Machine is also super pretty in the way that Logic, improved his singing and just tried something new, and I think that's a great thing. And the whole project wasn't meant as a studio album; it was just a soundtrack to a book he did, and that's why I don't think people appreciate it for what it is. But that's just my take on it. I can see how people would say that, like, oh, he tried to do something that he's not, and that's cool. But I still think it was a bold thing to do, and I'm happy and excited that Logic did that, and I hope to see more stuff like that in the future from him, because I think he's a super multifaceted artist. Now, transitioning to the latest studio album, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which by many is seen as the worst Logic album, and I have to agree on that. It was just, the whole thing seemed so incoherent, and most of the tracks were just thrown in there as fillers. We still have some good songs on here, like Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. The single was really good. We have a track with Eminem, which is also exciting. The YBN Cordae one was great, but in between that, like Wannabe, Clickbait, Out of Sight, Pardon My Ego, Cocaine, they're just, I don't like those songs. They're just thrown in there as like a filler to make the project longer, and they kind of touch on the theme of the project, on the concept, which is like how social media is not good, basically, and how it is destroying our humanity, or like our relationship with other people in a way. But it just didn't really go into that. It's so surface level scratching. We still have some good songs in here, like Limitless I really liked. We have a new Wiz Khalifa song. We had Commando with G-Eazy, which is also fine. Lost in Translation, which was probably the best song with the title track on this one. But just like the one with Will Smith or his dad, they're super cringy. And I feel like he just didn't take his time to perfect this one that he should have. And I hope the next one, hopefully No Pressure, is different than this one. So let's all stay excited for No Pressure. I know I've done a lot of coverage on No Pressure in the past, and I hope I continue to do so as more info comes out. So definitely stay subscribed for more info on that. And I hope you like this video. If you like this format of like the less scripted version, definitely let me know. Maybe I'll do some more on these. I definitely will go back to the scripted ones, but for now, I thought this was a fun thing to do. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Y'all have a good day.